Hey everyone, George here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about why your discus fish may appear stunted or actually may be stunted. And I'm going to give you 4 reasons why that possibly is happening and what you can possibly do about it early on. Because once stunting happens, it's very, very much hard to reverse it, if not impossible. So let's get into it right away here. The number one reason would be overcrowding of your tank. In other words, discus fish typically need 5 to 10 gallons per fish. And if you are passing that amount of space for your discus, this can lead to problems with stunting over the long period of time. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, they don't get the nutrition that they need, and there's some intimidation factors for feeding and things like that. So this can cause stunting in a lot of your situations where your fish may appear to have some that are larger and some that are much, much smaller in your tank. My recommendation on that would be to stick to the 5 to 10 gallons per fish scenario so that you can prevent that from being a cause to have your fish become stunted. If you can't do that, I would recommend that you just get a larger tank. If you are not able to get a larger tank, make sure that you have a minimum of, I keep no less than 5 to 7 fish in a tank. Make sure you've got a minimum of 65 to 75 gallons if you're going to even entertain the idea of raising discus fish. And this is something that is not a real problem for those who don't care if their fish are huge, if you're trying to grow monstrous fish or whatever. That's not a problem for that. But you also are really creating an environment in the tank for a lot of aggression, because your fish do need a certain amount of space in order to have a healthy hierarchy and so forth. So my recommendation is that if you are seeing some of your fish that are smaller in size than your other fish, the reason for that is basically a couple of different things. Number one, as I said, the tank size as far as how many gallons per fish that you are allowing, and also very important that you understand that fish that are going to be stunted, as I said earlier in the video at the beginning, are not going to be fish that are going to grow once they become adults. Once those fish are adults, they are pretty much going to stay that same size. Now, you can avoid some of this by putting all of your fish in at the same time and buying them all at the same size and not overcrowding your tank. Now, that would be the number one reason why your fish may be stunted. The second reason may be medications. Sometimes medications can create an environment where your fish do not have the ability to thrive in a tank, because the medications that you are giving the tank are impeding on their growth hormones and other factors that help them to grow to the size that you want. Now, I would be very careful about medicating your tanks. There are people who medicate their tanks as far as worming them and so forth over long periods of time, and my recommendation for that is to not do that if you possibly can. Once your fish have been introduced to your tank and they are all getting along and things are going well, and you've introduced your dither fish, such as your tetras, your bottom feeders, your cleanup crew, and that sort of thing, there isn't any reason to be adding more fish to your tank. And that is the number one reasons why we get diseases, and the number one reasons why we have to medicate our tanks, and thus you can create the environment for stunting your discus fish. Now, the third reason is not environmental necessarily, but it is certainly a factor, and that is that high-bred discus are not all the same. Many of the fish are bred to be larger, and some are bred as smaller fish. This is something we can't control because as we breed discus over many, many years, these traits become part of the DNA cycle in the fish, and some fish are just not destined to be very large and others are. Now, the reason for that is, as I said, the breeding process. So it's not something that you should be overly concerned about if you're going to have some smaller discus in your tank. If you're happy with the colors and the behavior, they're all getting along, then I would suggest to you that the stunting process that goes with that is not really classified as true stunting. What it truly is an environmental situation that takes place in the breeding process, and there's nothing you can really do about that because you have no idea what those fish are going to look like after the fish have been purchased. You have no control over the mating pairs that have been used to spawn the fish that you're buying for your tank. And I would suggest to you maybe you do a little bit of research and look at the parents if you possibly can. That's not always possible, especially if you're buying your fish online. But if you can get some idea as to the size of the mating pair, this will give you some idea as to what to expect their size to be. Now, that is taking these other factors into consideration, and that would be medications and also the environment in which you're keeping your fish. As I said earlier in the video, the tank size, how many gallons per fish, and so forth. And the fourth reason that I would tell you is simply this. There is a hierarchy and a pecking order with discus fish, as everyone knows. And a lot of times during that process, some of the fish that are in the lower part of that hierarchy do not get to eat first. In other words, they're fish that are going to be attacked or pushed away when the food goes to the tank, into the tank, I should say, and the more dominant fish in the tank will be more aggressive towards other fish and create an environment where they're just not getting enough to eat. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to look like they're withering away. It doesn't mean that they don't look like they're normal. They're just not going to produce a fish that is a larger size. And you can pretty much watch in your tank who's the dominant fish and who's not. And this will give you some idea as to what those fish may grow up to look like. Now, if you're raising discus in multiple tanks, maybe move them around a little bit and see if you can get those fish to do better with other discus that you might be raising. And this will give you an opportunity to take a very serious look at that process and see if you can get those fish to ideally get along and not have this aggression. But the pecking order in discus is a very natural thing. The hierarchy, as I said, is going to be certain fish are going to be dominant and other fish are not, and there's really nothing that you can do about that. Now, I have tanks where I have a couple of fish that are smaller than others, and that's because I've added them all at the same time. I allow that pecking order to really get itself out of the way immediately so that I don't have to think about that or worry about that. Thank you for joining me today on this one. I appreciate it. I just wanted to give you some idea as to what may cause problems with stunting in your tanks, and I hope that I helped you achieve that. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave your comments down below, and I will always get back to you within 24 to 48 hours if I possibly can. Thank you again. And the channel is growing. We've got a lot of good stuff that's coming up here. I've got a lot of information in my other videos, and I will leave some ideas on what you can watch in this video at the very end here. So hit that bell at the top there too, so that you always are reminded when we have a new video out. That will be something where you'll be alerted, and you'll be one of the first to be able to enjoy it. Thank you for joining me, and we will see you on the next one.